the article this month was on the astrology of polyglots. That is, people who are able to speak more than, 5 or more languages. But in general, what astrological factors contribute to a person having a facility for language and learning a number of languages, or being, greatly involved in language, even professionally. Let's just do sort of a quick review, see what you folks remember. Hello, Rohit. Nice to see you.
Namaste, Mark.
What is one of the things that emerged from that research that suggests inclination and facility towards learning a language?
A strong Mercury.
Strong Mercury. Anything else with regards to Mercury?
Mercury aspected by Jupiter, or in the sign of Jupiter.
Mercury under the influence of Jupiter, right?
Yes, Mercury in Nichabanga Raja Yoga.
Well, not just that by itself, but that can make a strong Mercury, all right?
Strong Mercury.
What else? Hello, Ekatrina. I have to stop and say hello to our Bulgarian. Hello. Okay. What else? Somebody else?
Mercury in the aspect of Rahu Ketu.
Sorry, say again?
Mercury with Rahu and Ketu, impact of Rahu.
Mercury, planet of speech, under the influence of Rahu and Ketu, representing things foreign, right? And listening, you mentioned obviously the importance of the second lord. And then what about the second? What about the second lord? What do we see in the charts of those polyglots?
Oh, strong second lord connection of second lord, Rahu Ketu axis.
Right, so strong second lord, just to begin with, the influence of the Rahu Ketu axis, and that can happen by Kendra relationship, as we saw. And so that's a factor. And connections between which houses? Anybody recall?
Second and fifth houses.
Second and fifth houses. What else?
Second and 12th.
Second and 12th houses. Okay. And then, Pete Dawson couldn't be with us today, but in the Jyotish Journey forum, he sort of suggested an additional parameter, which I liked, right? And has actually been researching a little bit more since he volunteered that. Does anybody remember that? It's from the Jaimini point of view.
The influence of Ketu on the second lord, second house.
On the fifth?
Fifth, sorry, my bad.
Fifth.
Well, not bad, because I would expand what he was talking about. Influence of Ketu on the second house and the fifth house from where?
Karakamshala.
Karakamshala. All right. So, this research happened, I called it a micro research. That was K and Rao's word. You take 10 charts or so, as I did in the case of the polyglots, and you see what you can see with regards to a certain factor, but then you expand that by doing what he always referred to as blind testing, which means you just start applying them to other charts to see to what degree the parameters apply to those of other people who have learned a lot of languages. Now, it so happened that after I distributed this article, I was contacted by 2 people that are part of this program, both of whom said, well, you see, Mark, I know a lot of languages. I applied the parameters to my chart, and here's what I saw. So that's what I want to look at here. I want to pull up the chart of a person who contacted me. So let me know when you're seeing a chart with, nope, that's not the chart I want you to see. A chart with Leo Lagna.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And is it large enough? Can people see it okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So again, this is a person in this program, which means what? What does it mean immediately when we know that's a person in this program?
Jyotish.
Yeah, they're a serious student of Jyotish, which is a good prediction, Rohit. And I will give you the information that they've been running their Mercury Mahadasha, okay, and have been since they're like, I think, mid-20s or so. Currently towards the end of that, and Mercury, Saturn, we'll come back to that. But, first of all, just acquaint yourself with this chart, familiarize yourself with it in terms of distinctive features, but then this is a person, I'll give you the information, that is also a polyglot, meaning they have some degree of facility in 5 languages. Most of them Indian dialects, but of course also English. What strikes you, if anything? Anyway.
Mercury in Lagna with directional strength,
So
aspected by
go ahead. Go ahead.
aspect Jupiter.
So we have Mercury here, who's not only Mercury, planet of speech, getting directional strength in the first house, but it's also, as you can see, the second lord. So it's doing double duty in that case. And it's under the influence of Jupiter. And what about this Jupiter of note?
Vargotama.
Quite strong, being Vargotama. What else?
The fifth word,
Go ahead.
the fifth word of warning, studying, fifth word.
So we were seeing that in the charts of all the polyglots, we had a pretty strong 5th house, 5th lord, right? Which was good for learning anything. And see here that Jupiter is a very strong 5th lord, very strongly placed. Ekatrina, can I ask you, does it make any connection other than to Mercury that's of some significance here based on what we were looking at as far as parameters?
Maybe to the moon as the 12th word. 12th word of foreign things.
Not just maybe,
Yeah.
but it's a very strong 212 connection forming, of course, Kesari Yoga, right? Actually, yeah, Kesari Yoga.
And the Saraswati Yoga
Pretty
also.
substantial Saraswati yoga as well.
Okay, both Luciana and Rohit see that Saraswati Yoga is here. And again, how would you classify this Saraswati Yoga? You know, good, bad?
Good, because Jupiter, I mean, Jupiter has strength, number one. Mercury has strength, and Venus has strength. So
what is Venus's strength there?
Venus should be Vargotama, middle signs of.
It has
No.
us.
It's cross 1640.
1640. No. So it's in the debilitation sign. I don't know if there's a Nijbhanga in the.
No. Well, you know.
Mercury Swa.
Mercury Swa. Thank you, Luciana. Very good. I mean, I'll show you Navamsha here so you don't have to struggle. But yeah, Mercury Swa. Venus actually does go to its debilitated sign, so it's the weakest. So the way the Saraswati Yoga has manifested itself is not so much artistically, which would be the case if Venus was stronger, but just a great, great love of learning and, you know, good educational achievement, you know, all that sort of thing. And guess what subperiod within Mercury she just got grabbed by the Jyotish Vidya, Jyotir Vidya, and has been just immersed in it ever since.
Mars.
Mercury, Jupiter.
Mercury, Jupiter would be correct. First chocolate of the day, virtual chocolate, goes to Ekaterina for that one. Absolutely. Mercury, Jupiter, when she just became completely immersed in the study of Jyotish. And then what else here is relevant based on, you know, some of the parameters I was suggesting in the article?
Chandra Lagna. We've got the second lord Mars aspect in its second house in the Rahu Ketu axis.
Beautiful, Rohit. Absolutely. I mean, Roberto. Absolutely. See, from Chandra Lagna, you got Mr. Rahu there in the second house, aspected by the second lord Mars. Anything else? We're missing something here.
Gemini angle.
Not yet.
The
Mercury is in the nakshatra of Ketu.
Very good. And something else here. It does have to do with Mercury and some additional qualification Mercury would get here for
12th, the second and the 12th lord aspecting so Mercury and Mars.
second.
Mars aspecting that.
And what would be the
Mars
significance?
aspecting Mercury.
What would be the significance of that? Just an energized Mars or Mercury? Is that what you're saying?
It's the second lord aspecting the 12th.
The second Lord
From
aspect.
Chandra Lagna.
Oh, from Chandra Lagna. Okay. Okay. All right. Yeah. Okay. Folks, remember my mentioning the Kendra relationship with Mercury or the second Lord, right? And you see here Rahu and Ketu is at 3 degrees, and Mercury is very mutual Kendra to them at 9 degrees. So you see here that this polyglot chart, and again, I hadn't looked at this polyglot chart before I did my research, actually fits every parameter that came out vis-a-vis the other charts. Now let's look at from the Gemini angle. Who's the planet with the highest degrees here?
Sun, I think. 27.
Yes, you are correct. And then where would it go in the Manj?
In Pisces, we can see here. So the fifth from Karakamsha would be Cancer. And we see K2 aspecting the fifth house and with the second word. So K2 has connection both with the second and fifth from Karakamsha Lagna, yes.
Yes, it does.
Applies.
Absolutely applies. I want to emphasize again that K and Rao really emphasize K2 for languages. Right? Really emphasize K2 for languages, and as we'll see, not just normal spoken languages, but also languages in the modern era, which we call computer languages. Right? But here we see that every parameter that I suggested in the article of this of someone who learned a lot of languages applies to this chart of another person who is in fact a polyglot. Okay. Questions about anything? Well, one more thing: the Saraswati yoga, right? We see that it's been a big influence on her life. Certainly, since she's been running her Mercury period, and of course, she's been absolutely immersed in the Vedanga. Limb of the Veda, Jyotish. Those who haven't heard me mention this, K and Rao used to count Saraswati Yoga using the 11th house as well. In other words, if all the natural benefics, and I think in Dr. Raman's book, 300 Important Combinations, he does the same. And I've found it to be quite valid. So see this chart from the moon. What do you notice then here?
Mercury, Venus in the 11th, Jupiter in the 7th.
Right. So Saraswati, in my view, and his view, Saraswati Yoga here would apply both from the birth lagna and from the moon, which then, of course, reinforces that particular patterning and the importance of it in this person's life and as far as interpreting their chart and what their life has been all about, particularly in the Mercury Mahadasha. Now, this is
even from the sun it applies.
Yes, it does. So all three lagnas, mind, body, spirit. Now, this is just an aside, but I used to, when I was first visiting K and Rao and sitting next to him when he was doing consultations in India, he used to astonish people, including me, by making statements about not just the person whose chart he was looking at, but their relatives or important people in their life. And of course, I came to know that how he was doing it was by using whoever the person in question was, using that house that signifies that person as a lagna, and then seeing what the Vimshotri Dasha period and sub-period portended that way. So use the 7th house, which of course represents this person's spouse, right, as a lagna, and take a look at the Mercury-Saturn period, which is what this is a woman, which is what this woman's been running, but see that period and sub-period as potentials from Aquarius as it pertains to her husband's experience during this time.
Not good. Kind of separation, or partner going somewhere abroad, or health with the partner.
Well, why do you say, first of all, one of those turns out to be correct, okay? But why would you say that, Ekaterina?
Well, Saturn will become the word of the ascendant of the partner,
Right.
and see that it goes to the 6th house.
Right.
So for that person, he may experience some health issues, accidents. So
And why in particular in Mercury Saturn? You know, you
because
see
from Mercury, Saturn is in the 12th house. But
okay.
from so,
But what about the
woman can
Mahadasha
be
Lord
separated.
itself? What about the Mahadasha Lord itself?
Is it the fact that it's the 8th Lord from Aquarius?
It is the 8th Lord from Aquarius and positioned where?
In the 7th house, which is a Marga house.
Right. So in Mercury Saturn, there were health issues for the spouse, which fortunately seem to have resolved themselves. But it came as a bit of surprise. But you see how I just wanted to kind of show this example because since I saw him do that, I mean, obviously I look at these things now too and have made predictions on this basis as well. This is unfortunately not a particularly favorable one. But nonetheless, you see how that plays itself out. Anyway, moving on here. Now, someone currently among us is to recognize the following chart. Because this person also contacted me, and I don't believe they're a polyglot, meaning they don't know 5 languages, but they've learned at least several languages, and have some linguistic sort of ability. And acquired that primarily in a particular Mahadasha. And take a look at this chart. What would be said about that, or what do you notice? What strikes you?
Exalted in the 2nd house, aspecting Mercury.
So number one, we have Jupiter, strong Jupiter, aspecting rather closely Mercury. And of course, we've got an exalted benefic in the 2nd. What else?
Mercury is also very combust.
Very combust, but is it within 1 degree?
It is not within, it is within 1 degree.
Right. So again, this becomes one of those interesting situations where it raises the question of that Cassini idea, right?
Cassini idea, yes.
In the heart of the sun, which is particularly important because why? Why would this be particularly important in this case? To whether or not Mercury has combustion or whether it actually becomes a powerhouse.
It's moving away from.
The Lagna Lord.
It's the Lagna Lord. And involved in, first of all, make note of the fact that it's a Mercury-ruled Lagna. We, sort of mentioned that. But any yoga being formed here?
Buddha Aditya Yoga.
Buddha-Ditya Yoga doesn't have the best house placement, right?
Yeah.
But is Buddha-Ditya Yoga, and then also gets the aspect of Jupiter, things look different and better from the moon, right? In terms of the placement of the Buddha-Ditya Yoga. Right?
Yeah.
What else is relevant here based on the article?
Ketu with the 2nd Lord.
We got the 2nd Lord here with the Rahu-Ketu axis, right? And what Mahadasha was this person born in?
Jupiter?
Sorry?
No.
Mars, it's in Dhanishta.
In Dhanishta, approximately how many, what was the balance of Dasha at birth?
Just 1 year, probably.
Very brief.
Yeah.
No more than 2 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, he moved into what period next?
Rahu.
Rahu. And it was in the Rahu major period that, and followed by the Jupiter major period, I think it was mostly in Rahu, if I'm not mistaken, that the language skills were acquired. And then what else strikes you related to things that were discussed in the article about people who end up learning languages?
5th house, 5th Lord. Strong.
What about it, Rohit?
Venus fifth lord is in the fifth house, rendering it pretty strong.
So strong fifth house, Swakshetra, Mula Trikona, actually, Venus. Anything else?
There's a close kindred relationship with the exalted Jupiter. It's very, very close.
Yes. These influence each other. And then, who's the second lord from the moon?
Jupiter.
Exalted, aspecting onto its own second house from there. And is there any what strikes you about the moon and Jupiter here? Anyone?
Mukti yoga.
It's Mukti yoga, but with Jupiter retrograde, right?
Yeah.
I've just seen over and over again these retrograde benefics can be erratic in terms of the benefit that they give or do not give, as it were.
The retrograde benefits can be erratic. You said, okay, erratic, yeah.
Yeah, can be somewhat erratic in terms of actually protecting or giving the benefit they do. I know there's some theories it makes them stronger, and I'm not objecting to that per se, but I'm just saying the other side of that, the other observation. What do you see in terms of connections between certain house lords that I was highlighting?
This angle, this Venus-Jupiter angle, mutual relationship. I mean, Jupiter is the Kendra word, Venus is the sign word, so this is kind of Raja Yoga.
I would consider it a mutual sambandha that does create an angle-trine combination, right? So obviously in this case the fifth lord and the second lord are the same, and they're both strong. Right? And is there a 5-2 combination here?
Yes, a 5-2-12 combination.
Go ahead, Rohit.
The Venus becomes the 12th as well as the fifth lord. Moon is the second lord, and both are in a trine from each other. So there's a 5-2-12.
Again, you take the Trikona Sambandha, there does exist a relationship, not a primary Sambandha. And then applying Jaimini.
Karakamsha Lagnai, I think, is Capricorn.
It is.
And Ketu and Moon are in the second house from it.
Yes.
Ketu is in the second house from it.
Yes, and you see the aspect of the two really strong benefics onto the fifth house in there as well. But the key point is that K2, but interestingly enough, you'll see a Jaimini Sutra that indicates that K2 in the second house from Karkalagna afflicted could make a person stammer. In other words, it could give a speech impediment. It could actually make you mute. It could be an indication of someone, say, who was on the spiritual path and might observe mauna, right? Silence for spiritual purposes, or just someone. I haven't examined this with the idea of autisticness, where there's lack of speech or disinclination of speech. But here, there's what are the influences here on K2 in the second house from Karakamsha?
It's a good influence.
Beautiful benefics, right? Beautiful benefics, and then also, of course, if you take Trikona Argala, right? Venus is going to be giving Shubha Trikona Argala as well, besides aspecting, and then, of course, you've got the Moon-Venus combination, right? Moon-Venus combination. Okay, so any other further observation there?
Yeah,
Question?
I'm not getting how there's a Moon-Venus combination here.
From the Jaimini angle. Okay. In Jaimini, fixed signs, but then if you take Trikona Sambandha, lately my students have been hearing me talk about Kendra and Trikona Sambandha, meaning when two planets are in mutual Kendras, two planets are in mutual trines. It's given in the Jyotish Shastra that this is a Sambandha. But from the Jaimini angle, you've got fixed signs influencing movable signs except for the one next to them. Clear?
Yes.
Okay.
Mark,
Just a question.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Just wanted to find out, did this person have a speech delay as a child?
Because of the influence of Saturn?
The second lord seems to be afflicted, and Mercury also is in the 6th house. So that's why.
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. I doubt it, but I don't know either. You mean, did they start speaking late, that kind of thing?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay.
Mark, the Trikona and Kendra Sambandha, it works for Jaimini also?
Well, no, I don't apply it to Jaimini, but in this case, the Moon and Venus are in sign aspect with each other.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
It's not about being in Kendra Trikona Sambandha. I've not seen that in Jaimini. It's in Parashara Shastra. That's where it's mentioned, specifically Paladipika. But, it exists in Parashara Hora, too. There's a chapter in Parashara Hora called Mutual Co-workers that's all about the planets in Kendras influencing each other and potentially becoming Yogacaras as a result. If you're looking for a classical reference for the basis for what I'm talking about. All right, we'll go on. Now, there's another person among us that should recognize this chart as well. I'm not sure how many languages this person speaks, at least 2, possibly 3. But there's someone who've been, their business has been language. In the sense that they founded and are running a successful language school, in this case, English as a second language. And from the standpoint of the parameters again, just take a look here and what strikes you.
Let me make a stunning prediction about this person, Mark. Is this a female from Bulgaria?
God, Laurie, you're astonishing. Okay, I think you've developed some siddhi or something, right? You've just been able to cognize these things. Very impressive. Yes, you spilled the beans. I hope you don't mind, Ekaterina. This is the chart of Ekaterina.
Of course not.
But she's been very successful at establishing a language school, entrepreneur this way. Right, so language has been, in foreign language has been an enormous part of her, life, destiny. And what do we see here? Now, Ekaterina, you have to be quiet.
Saturn, second lord with Ketu and the Saraswati yoga.
Yeah, I mean, the most obvious thing is Saturn under the influence of, both the first lord and, as the second lord under the strong influence of the Rahu-Ketu axis. In Gemini, in Mercury's ruled sign, right? And then you mentioned the Saraswati yoga, which of course, what's particularly significant about this Saraswati yoga, or what makes it particularly pronounced?
From Lagna and Chandra Lagna.
It is in the Lagna. I mean, Jupiter has strength. It's in the Lagna. Venus is there. Mercury is in the strongest angle.
So, I've said that yogas that connect to the ascendant, become more, an expression of who this person is. And Roberto mentioned that the Saraswati yoga is repeating from the moon because Chandra Lagna and birth Lagna are the same. Right? And then Rohit's saying, it's very connected to the Lagna. And then we have, in terms of qualifying Saraswati yoga, as far as strength goes, what do you notice?
Directional strength.
Jupiter's got directional strength falling in its debilitation sign, but, right, having that directional strength, and then what else?
So Venus is Vargotama.
Vargotama.
Venus is also Vargotama. And then, where is the planet of language and speech?
The 10th house.
It's in the 10th house of career and profession, right? And it's the dispositor of that Saturn Ketu conjunction. Is also
And
quite.
Mercury must be in its own sign in the Navamsha.
Uh,
Oh, you're a little bit off there. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Little
2611. Sorry, my bad. Sorry.
little bit off there, but so you know, Ekaterina, if you wouldn't mind sharing with us, you know, how you know more than English and Bulgarian? You know a little Russian.
I can speak well Bulgarian, English at most excellent level, Russian very freely I can speak. I studied German, Italian, I can understand Italian. I have learned Arabic for a year.
Oh well, you're a polyglot. You're a polyglot.
And now I'm learning Sanskrit.
Well,
Yes,
we'll come back to this because
German,
you are.
Italian, for sure, I can understand.
Well, you've studied more than 5 languages, I'm hearing.
More,
right?
for sure, more than 5.
More for sure, and you're a linguist in the sense that this is your profession as well. So this became I probably should have used your chart in the article, right? But
And this was all in the Jupiter Dasha.
all in the Jupiter Mahadasha, but of course now you're in the Saturn Mahadasha, right?
Now in Saturn also, yeah. Mm.
So who's Jupiter's dispositor? I think that's important to see here, right?
Yeah.
Important to see. So very interesting chart from the standpoint of language acquisition. But now
And actually in Rahu period also, my school days, when Rahu period, so then the English language and the German language, Rahu aspect, second word. Yes.
And you fit the parameters more. At the end of the article, I was talking about periods where the polyglots were acquiring their language, and some just based on the natural significations. In the previous chart, or in the first chart, they're acquired in the Mercury Mahadasha, and everything we saw about that. Here it started in the Rahu Mahadasha. Everything. So now from Karakamsha, who's the somebody other than Ekaterina? Tell me who the Karakamsha Agni is. Who's the Amakaraka?
Karakamsha Lagna should be Virgo.
Yes, Moon is Amakaraka, goes into the 9th Navamsha. It's going to place it in. What strikes you about that?
The 5th house from Virgo.
Second house.
Second house has Mercury. 5th house strikes you, but then does the parameter we've been looking at apply or not?
The 5th Lord is conjunct Ketu.
Yes, it is. The 5th Lord is conjunct Ketu. This is all blind testing, and since I didn't select these charts previously because they fit the parameter, I discovered that they fit the parameter when I started looking for the parameter. Thank you for letting us use your chart, Ekaterina, publicly.
Mark,
Anna.
I just noticed that she has 2 placements in Shravana. She has the ascendant and she also has Jupiter.
Talk about that. Go ahead, talk about, or Michael, you could jump in as well, but Luciana, say something about that.
Yeah, no, because I've noticed that Shravana is very important for languages and having a good ear, and it's one of the things that Penny taught us when she presented Shravana.
Right. So two people here have studied many people may have studied the nakshatras probably more extensively than I have, and while writing this article, I got input, and certain nakshatras tend to relate to languages. And if I'm correct, Shravana, the symbol for it is the ear. Is that correct?
Yes.
Right. So this is a very, very relevant comment that I'm really glad that you brought up. Very, very relevant comments. So both the ascendant
And Jupiter.
And Jupiter are both in, and it was in Jupiter that a lot of this happened, right? Of course, it's activating so many things. It's activating the Saraswati yoga. It's activating Gajikesari yoga, et cetera, et cetera. Good and interesting. All right, we can move on. Any other comments about this chart before we move on?
Mark, just one little addition to what Luciana said about Shravana, that there is a love of learning with Shravana, an appreciation for knowledge.
Okay, good.
And a respect for knowledge, actually, high respect for knowledge.
And Michael, maybe you'd want to mention other nakshatras that you highlighted and think, also are relevant as far as, language acquisition. And why?
Dear. Luciana, I need your help. There were a couple others.
Wasn't Uttarashada one of them?
Yeah, I think Uttarashada would be one. There were 4, I think, that we came up with, and now my mind is a blank.
No problem. I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I'm going to.
No, that's okay. Possibly Pusha in some way. Shatabisha, we thought. The nakshatra Shatabisha also.
Okay. But Shravana, I think, stood out more than anything.
Yes,
Mark,
the main one.
Mark, I have a point on the D9 of Ekaterina's chart.
Please share.
She has a Saraswati Yoga in Navamsha.
She does.
Jupiter and Mercury in the first house.
She does.
Directional strength applies to Navamsha.
Yes.
So Jupiter and Mercury
reinforces what happened in Jupiter, right?
Yep.
Didn't you get your advanced degrees in Jupiter too? Didn't you get your advanced degree in Jupiter?
Yes. I graduated in Jupiter period. Yes.
Right. She's a learner. She's a Saraswati woman.
Yeah.
No question. All right. Now, there's a particular reason that I'm showing you this chart, which is a chart of the son of a very, very good friend of mine. And just take a moment to absorb or to reflect upon the elements of it, and particularly those that might be relevant to our discussion here.
Mercury is with Ketu in the 12th house in Gemini.
Mercury Swa. Right?
Swa, yeah.
With Ketu. And
the second word sign.
The second Lord, all in which house?
In the 12th.
All in the 12th house.
Jupiter is exalted and it has directional strength.
No real connection to Mercury in this case, right? But we have strong Jupiter's exaltation sign. How about 5th house, 5th Lord? What strikes you here about this?
Nicha Bhanga Raja Yoga.
Because
Maharaji Yoga.
We have an exchange here between
1-5,
5, right?
Yeah.
Exchange here between 1 and 5, and what about that Jupiter-Mars combination? What strikes you about that?
Jupiter-Mars combination is a Bhanga Raja Yoga. So Jupiter is the lord of the 6th and the 9th, and Mars is the lord of the 5th and the 10th. So it's one of the most severe Raja Yogas. Only thing is Mars is in a planetary war with Venus, and I think Venus will have won it.
Venus always wins if you go by brightness, which I do, right?
Yeah.
And it is a blemish on the Mars here that is an otherwise very, interesting Mars from a Jyotish point of view, given the 1-5 exchange and then the addition of the 9-10 Raji over here, right? All in the grip of who?
All in the grip of
Saturn.
Saturn. This is the, besides the planetary war that Mars is in, this is the other blemish on all this combination, right? Even though it adds to the traditional angle trine component to it.
Mark, we said that an aspect of a retrograde benefic will be erratic. Will the aspect of a retrograde malefic be also erratic?
typically not, when it's a part of an Arishta yoga, as Charak points out in his books on medical astrology, which of course he got from Rao, it's worse. When in a part of an Arishta combination, where the malefics are afflicting the Lagna Lord, and the benefic is retrograde, then it's more virulent, meaning it's worse. And I've found that to be very true. But in a general sense, retrograde planets can behave somewhat erratically vis-a-vis K and Rao, and I found this to be true. What I want people to see here is, you've got the influence of Ketu in Gemini on both Mercury and on the Sun. So how did the Dasha sequence unfold here? The moon's at 1140 of Scorpio.
1140 Scorpio.
Which
Saturn.
nakshatra is born in the Saturn period? Approximately how many balance of Dasha at birth? Just approximately.
5 years, probably.
Yeah.
Not a bad guess. So, relatively at a young age, school starting to go age, right? He moves into which Mahadasha? Mercury. So, language acquisition, foreign language acquisition in the Mercury Mahadasha was quite predictable. And he did learn, he's English speaking as a native, but did learn some foreign languages. But what he gained a tremendous ability to do is he taught himself, he got fascinated with computer science and, highly self-motivated, and taught himself to program in a number, not just one or two, but a number. It actually became quite expert, even at a high school age, as a computer programmer. And, if one of Rao's students, what I consider one of his best faculty members, wrote a book called Planets in Education, which if it's not in your library, it's Naval Singh is his name, Naval Singh. If it's not in your library, it should be. He gives a table in there that I think I've duplicated in one of my articles, but that came pretty much from K and Rao, sort of identifying, which grahas relate to different subjects. And, he definitely identifies Ketu related to computer language and computer programming. It doesn't stop there, but it's certainly one of the karakas, and you see it strongly being expressed here. It's a very interesting chart in a lot of ways. About language acquisition. What health issue, though, could then precipitate in the Mercury Mahadasha based on some of what Mercury relates to physically, which it did in this case?
Skin?
Well, not a bad guess, but what other? Sorry.
Was it something to do with this throat?
It's in Gemini as well, so.
Lungs.
Throat. Yeah.
Lungs. His father was very, very concerned about him at one point, and asked me for upaya because of some real problems. I don't know if it was pneumonia or what it was, but he was having some real affliction to the lungs during the Mercury Mahadasha. Okay, so we're going to go on here.
Mark,
Yes.
give this chart. I think the Karakamsha Lagna year will be Taurus.
I forgot to cover that angle, so go ahead.
Karakamsha Lagna.
Who's the Atmakaraka? Who's the Atmakaraka?
Atmakaraka is Venus.
Atmakaraka is Venus at 2346, goes where in Navamsha?
Navamsha, he will have gone to Taurus in Navamsha. Oh no, it's Aquarius. How?
Well, it's in the
only 7 signs. Sorry, Aquarius. 7 signs only. Yeah.
It's in the eighth. It's in the eighth Navamsha, so it's going to go to.
And in the fifth house from Karakamsha Lagna is Ketu and Mercury.
Very good. very good. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. Yes. And with Mercury obviously being the fifth lord in the fifth with Ketu, which would also give, according to the Jaimini Sutras, mathematical ability, and which you certainly had and comes into play with computer science to some degree. Good. I'm glad you highlighted that.
Would also be good for Jyotish, right?
Could, yes. Well, if you take, the word they use is a grunty, which, Jyotish could be included with that. This can be applied dynamically too. I first met K. N. Rao and for a period of 12 years was absolutely immersed in the study of Jyotish, which went from my Aries Charadasha, K2 fell into the fifth house from there. I found it to be true. In answer to your question, reader, and just to pick up on your comment.
Also, one more point, Mark, I don't know whether that is relevant. In B9 from the Karakamsha Lagna, Mercury, the Lord of the fifth, is in the second house.
In the Vamsha, from Swamsha, you're talking about.
From Swamsha, yes.
Swamsha, yeah. More importantly, with the aspect of Jupiter, I think, right? In Jupiter's sign.
Yeah, with the aspect of Jupiter in a Jupiter sign.
Well, he's very, very bright. His father's brilliant, and his mother's brilliant too. He's very, very bright. Achieved very well educationally, but he just really almost displayed a genius for in learning computer languages and learn them on his own, and then learn the programming. He's been, very marketable skills. He works independently as a programmer, very high level programmer, and does very well that way. Okay, so moving on. Now, at some point, I kind of ran out of time when I was writing this article. I had intended to include some additional sections to it that I will include at some point, having to do, number one, with, computer languages and charts that show the capacity for this and how that shows up. This is just one example of many I've collected. But then I was going to also include those people who get involved in the study of Sanskrit, Ekatrina, and in which case, this can show, this is a classical language. It's a language of scholars, right? It can show up in a lot of different ways. But, and I tried to find the reference on this and had trouble finding it, but I always thought, I'll refer to K2 as related to Sanskrit. And we saw in the case of Ekaterina, she's in her Saturn Mahadasha with K2, and she's a Sanskrit scholar. Now, I wouldn't use that specifically as, and there's a number of people I know who are, a part of this session today who have studied Sanskrit seriously. And so I'm going to add this section, but I'm showing you this horoscope. I wonder if anybody recognizes it. I've used it, and it's actually of quite a renowned person, but in a small niche. People recognize the name Ramamurri Shastri?
Yeah. Demuri Shastri.
Ramamurri Shastri, who K. N. Rao refers to as his unseen, unspoken to Jaimini Guru, which would make him my unseen, unspoken grandfather, Jaimini Guru.
Parama Guru.
Parama Guru. Said to, he was a brilliant scholar who evidenced just a remarkable memory facility at a fairly young age. Was sent to Gurukulams in Varanasi, right? And, I once heard K. N. Rao, and I don't know if it was exaggerations, but he said he knew 20,000 sutras related to Jaimini. Now, of course, there aren't 20,000 sutras in the Jaimini Sutras. He was referring to Sanskrit commentarial literature as well. What strikes you about this chart from just the standpoint of, either language acquisition, or classical learning more than anything?
It's just the Saraswati yoga from all three lagnas.
Yes, that's it. Okay. That's it. It's the Saraswati yoga from all three angles. Okay, and then qualify that, Rui. What makes it extraordinary?
The fifth house, Venus.
I mean, there's a Maharaja yoga also, which Venus is part of. And, you know.
There's Vijay, go ahead. What were you saying?
The fifth house, which has got Venus and Mercury. Mercury is the first and fourth, and fifth house is the house of learning.
And what about this? What about this Mercury and Venus? Do you notice anything rather special about it? Anything?
Mercury is Vargotama.
Mercury is Vargotama, so it has that sort of source of strength. But but what's going on here? You see in the Vamsha?
Exchange.
Now look at the components of the Saraswati yoga. Okay, so you've got Mercury, Venus, and Jupiter, and see their disposition in the Vamsha.
159 and Jupiter in Aquarius.
159 and Jupiter in Aquarius. Right? Exactly. And then
is there one of those three yogas, Shrikanta yoga? We used to have three yogas which arise from the 159 position of planets.
Well, there's. Well, you tell me which any of those yogas apply here?
That's what I'm trying to remember. It is Shrikanta yoga and
Srinatha, Shrikanta, and
Srinatha yoga.
There are so many.
Srinatha.
Srinatha yoga applies. Parvata yoga. There's so many of them.
All three apply. Now, remember, Sri Kanta involves which three planets?
Jupiter, Venus, Mercury,
Moon, and Jupiter.
Sun, Moon, and Lagna.
First Lord.
Sun, Moon, and Lagna Lord. They have to all be in angles or trines, and they have to have some sources of strength. And then how about Srinatha yoga?
Mercury, Venus, and ninth Lord.
Mercury, Venus, and ninth Lord, and then Vrinsha yoga.
Jupiter, Saturn, and the fifth Lord.
Right. So you've got what's good about the ninth Lord here, besides the blemish of the sixth Lord, Mars?
Aspected by Jupiter. It is in Jupiter's sign, aspected by Jupiter.
Saturn is Vargotama.
Ninth and Maharaja.
And it's Vargotama, right? Saturn Vargotama. So you've got a Mercury.
From the Gemini angle Mars.
Look at the strength of the trine lords. Mercury, Lagna Lord, right? Vargotama. Venus in an exchange in the Vamsha. Saturn, Vargotama. And then what period was he born in?
He was born in
Sun.
Rahu.
Rahu.
Born in Rahu, again, approximately how much dasha at birth?
About 10 years.
Probably a little less.
Yeah, probably less than
But let's forsake of argument, because he was sent away to the Gurukulam, I believe, around age 10. Okay, maybe a little earlier. Then whose Mahadasha is he in?
Probably would have gone into Jupiter.
Jupiter, right? And he just displayed this enormous capacity for memorizing Shastra. And he's learning Veda and Vedanga, particularly Jyotish. He was remarkable. He would pick up a chart and he would just start quoting sutras, right? Jaimini sutras, but then Sanskrit commentarial literature. He would quote that, and then he would make his prediction based on that. As many of you have heard me write about and talk about, and K. and Ram mentioned, he would write out his predictions. Navamsha Dasha was a primary predictive tool of his. If he had a correct Navamsha, he predicted fantastically. If he had an incorrect Navamsha, his predictions would go wrong.
Could have
But
very easily become a lawyer.
sorry,
I'm saying could have very easily become a lawyer.
maybe. But there's too much Saraswati yoga here in classicism for him to become just a lawyer. But then you have to see these Saraswati yoga planets in the Vansha, where they all fall in trions and all have good sources of strength. It's a remarkable picture that way, and just highlights the importance of the Vansha.
But Mark, from this man is a Gemini man, so we will also explore the Gemini angle.
And what do you see that way?
What I see is the Karakamsha Lagna is Gemini, and Mercury is the lord of the Lagna. Karakamsha Lagna, it is in the 5th house with the 5th lord.
Well, it all repeats because Karakamsha Lagna and Birth Lagna are the same. And who are the influence? Look at how many influences on the 2nd lord and who's influencing the 2nd house. Using Jaimini.
K2 aspect, the second.
Four planets are influencing the 2nd lord, and 2nd house is being influenced by just Rahu.
Now remember the special Jaimini Raja Yoga that comes about when the moon, first of all, the moon moon's the 2nd lord, it's in Gemini, right? And then it comes under the influences of 4 grahas, forming that special Raja Yoga. And then, as Ekatrina pointed out, both Rahu and Ketu exalted, if you take their exaltation positions, as I do, would be Taurus and Scorpio, aspecting the 2nd from there. He was quite the Sanskrit scholar. He was quite the scholar, Vedic scholar, period, but he was quite the Sanskrit scholar and learned Sanskrit, at a very young age.
Mark, just my 2 cents on it. I think you would probably have to take Jupiter as well for Sanskrit.
No, you would. Absolutely.
And if you take Jupiter and you take Moon, which is the 2nd lord, and you see the influence, Jupiter and Saturn, because Saturn is legacy, tradition, all those things, and Jupiter is classical learning.
Jupiter for Veda and Vedanga, which has to mean Sanskrit also.
Right, and Sanskrit is generally mostly learned via legacy. So Saturn also would probably, you would have to consider that also. And here, both aspect onto the moon. Now again, we'll have to see more charts when it comes to Sanskrit, but I think Saturn and Jupiter.
I've collected a bunch, and I'm going to include that in the article at one point, and Jupiter for sure. Okay. One more chart.
Just a point.
Do you mind explaining again the 2nd lord aspects, moon, because Rahu aspecting moon, I'm not understanding that.
No. We're doing Jaimini because we started talking about the Karakamsha Lagna severe, and therefore we're doing Jaimini. Okay. And then if you focus on Cancer, the 2nd house of the birth chart, and you take Jaimini sign aspects, then Rahu and Ketu aspect the 2nd house. Clear? You know Jaimini sign aspects.
It's clear to me that it's Jaimini, so I don't know that.
Okay, all right.
I'll wait until your course to understand that.
Right. I understand that why you'd be lost when we're discussing Jaimini aspects because you don't know them yet. Sorry. I want to move on here because normally this webinar would be an hour and a half, but I have to confine myself to just mostly an hour a day. But I wanted to look at one more chart. This is the chart of Iran Granthi Rangacharya, another very currently living Jaimini scholar who I have benefited from, reading his things. Not very well illustrated in my experience, but extremely knowledgeable and has been exposed to a lot of Sanskrit Jaimini commentarial literature as well. Besides being a Sanskrit scholar, he knows a number of Indian dialects, and he's been a poet as well. Right? What strikes you about this chart from the linguistic point of view?
Mercury exchange with Venus.
So you got Mercury strong here by virtue of the exchange, right? It's a Sun-Mercury combination connected to the ascendant, so I think it's not the best Buddha-Ditya Yoga, but we'd count it. There is combustion here.
Yeah. Lord of the 2nd and the 5th Jupiter, aspecting Lagna.
Yeah, this is what's very relevant here, particularly Vedic scholar. He's got the second and the fifth Lord Jupiter Swa. Right? And then what about the influences on the second house?
Influences on the second house is Venus, Mars.
Rahu Ketu. Yeah.
Ketu, Rahu Ketu. Mm-hmm. And disposited by that, Ketu disposited by that Jupiter, right? Since its own nakshatra. There's more to discuss here, but unfortunately, folks, for right now, I'm out of time. Thank you all for your participation and for those who are willing to share their charts. Again, in the future, this webinar will be more like an hour and a half. Stay tuned for the next February article, which will come out within not this next week, but the week following, right? Which would be more like the first week in February. I hope to actually get it out by next week, and we'll see about that. At the very latest, it would come out during the following week. Totally different topic and another research article, something that I've not written about previously that will be new to a lot of you. So we'll end as we normally do with our concluding Sanskrit prayer. Om Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityom Ma Mritam Gamaya Sarvesham Swasti Bhavatu Sarvesham Shanti Bhavatu Sarvesham Mandalam Bhavatu Sarvesham Purnam Bhavatu Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu Om Shanti 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 Hari Tat Sat. Nice to be with everyone again. Thank you all for your participation. I thought we had a good, lively discussion. And we'll meet again when our karma is to meet again. So until then, namaste. Enjoy your Sunday, rest of your Sunday. Bye for now.
Namaste.
Thank you very much, Ma.